Now for a bunch of stories I didn't know about at first because they weren't on the Feature Sabrina issues list. Pep 248. Pep's got one panel showing Sabrina's ideal car, and there's really nothing to say about it. It's just a bunch of text boxes around a car. That was released in 1970 before Archie's TV Laugh-Out 6. All I could say about it would be reading off what the text boxes are saying. Life with Archie 113. This was released soon after Archie's TV Laugh-Out 8. I'm including this because this is a story where Sabrina saves the day, but it takes forever to get to that part. There's really nothing to talk about until the 8th page. The Archies get ready to go to a concert, and Jughead finds out that the person who gave them a chance to play the concert left the hotel to skip town with all of the ticket money. Archie says he'll tell his bands what happened, and they run after his band in Angry Mob, with the exception of Sabrina. Why does the narration call her pert and pug-nosed? Why does she waste time saying to her cat that she knows Hilda would never approve of her deciding to help? He already knows. She casts a spell so that all of the signs will point to Riverdale. This causes someone in a vehicle to tell the thief that he got his gang turned around and he needs to watch where he's going. The bus ends up turning around and heading back to Riverdale from the confusion, where they end up arrested and Jughead gets all of the money back. The guy that the Archies thought they were going to be playing backup for apologized to Veronica's father for the bad guy using his name to rob them, and it's flying up next week to give a free concert for Riverdale with the Archies playing. Then the story wastes our time with Hilda confusingly yelling at Sabrina for what she did. Why did the writer think we wanted to see this? The only way Hilda would know Sabrina did this is if she somehow felt like spying on her in her free time, because she wouldn't have told Hilda about it. Thankfully, the last panel has Hilda say she'll forgive her, and Sabrina's in a good mood again. This story is about the Archies getting told they're gonna get to have a concert just for someone to skip town with the ticket money. And Sabrina uses her magic to make sure he drives back to Riverdale and gets arrested. It takes a while to see Sabrina. And when she does show up, it's the same scene where she uses magic. So it comes out of nowhere for an easy resolution. But the villain's believable and clever. Archie's Joke Book 187. Drag Gags. Hilda tells Sabrina she doesn't want a souped-up broom. This would only make sense if she assumes Sabrina's so ignorant that she'd just damage the broom by trying to improve it. Why would she try to improve it in a hands-on way instead of using magic? This was released right after Archie's TV Laugh-Out 20. It wasn't in the Sabrina Complete collections, and neither were the stories after this. Archie's Joke Book 252 buzz around. Because there's a mosquito in the house, Hilda scares Sabrina by trying to zap it over and over. Even though this way she has to accurately aim a small beam of her magic at a small, fast-moving thing, when she could send a bunch of teleportation smoke at it, and have her area of magic be larger. Sabrina decides to run out of the room instead of doing what I suggested, or at least pointing at Hilda to change her mind. And Hilda says she proved she's smarter than a mosquito, as her house is full of damage that a witch could easily repair. And the mosquito's just fine anyways. This was in the same issue as the page called What a Kisser, after Archie's TV Laugh-Out 63. Pep 345. This was released after Archie's TV Laugh-Out 63. Harvey went all the way to Sabrina's house to tell Hilda he wasn't able to meet Sabrina after school today, and he says he hoped she didn't mind him not being able to carry her books for her. He's a surprisingly nice guy in this story. Of course, Sabrina was floating her books behind her, so she didn't mind. She would freak out any person who'd see it, and she'd never know who would be watching, but she knows it doesn't matter because people would assume they were hallucinating and that nobody would believe them. Archie's Joke Book 253. This was released after Archie's TV Laugh-Out 64. Somehow I'm expected to believe that every witch in the world sent Sabrina a Christmas card. She's not even the only witch that's good. So you'd think that her being a good witch wouldn't make her stand out so much that every witch would know her. And if they did send her these cards, they'd be booby-trapped to prank her with magic, because witches in the series don't approve of using magic for good. Also, The only reason she'd be surprised by this is if this was her first year living on Earth. Why did this take until now to happen? Why would she think the Christmas cards are good, and all they seem to be, if they're from witches, and she'd know witches wouldn't approve of her? Does every witch get a card from every witch on Earth? Then why doesn't Hilda imply that this happens for her as well, instead of acting like this is special for Sabrina? She uses magic and says she'll send one giant card to the person most responsible for bringing her all of these cards. It's the mailman, who needs hot water for his feet from his wife. So it's nice that he appreciates it. He has to be already used to witches existing if he isn't freaked out at seeing the cards show up. He has to be a warlock himself then, because it's not legal to read someone else's mail. So him being a mailman wouldn't explain him knowing they're witches. Hilda says she'll put up the Christmas decorations with magic. It's surprising that Sabrina doesn't get upset with her for it, like in a different story where it made her cry. Hilda says that now they have nothing to do. And somehow they're both on the same wavelength and want to magically take down the decorations and put them up the boring way, even though Hilda's usually nothing like Sabrina. Archie's joke book 254. Sabrina tells her aunts they were right that bobsledding is fun, and she has a surprisingly nice family moment bobsledding with all of them. She says they have to hurry home because it's starting to snow heavily. There's no reason for them not to just warp home. Instead, Zelda says they only have one broom for all of them to share. Of course they can fly at home sharing it. Why did Zelda think they couldn't do that? Then, after Hilda crashes into the tree without us getting to see the moment where she impacted it because of some dumb smoke, Sabrina says she should give up skiing because she cares about her. She decides to use flying brooms to ski instead, which is clever, even if it'd freak out mortals. Archie's joke book 256. Zelda looks at a want ad and says she's not qualified to do any job, and all she learned was how to create a fog and flashing lights. It's very convenient that she happened to say only that, even though she's good at tons of different spells, and also learned how to make brews, because Sabrina says in response that she knows the perfect job for her. She takes her to the disco to be a special effects person. This is one of the very rare times where disco is mentioned in 70s style Sabrina, and it's an 80s story. This was released after Archie's TV Laugh Out 66. Now here's one right before Laugh Out 67 that I wasn't told about. Archie's joke book 257. Somehow Salem sees someone watching TV outside while Sabrina's taking a walk with Harvey. He hears a commercial saying that dogs deserve the best, and gets mad enough to use magic so that the TV breaks. That was depressing. Archie's joke book 258. This was released after Archie's TV Laugh Out 67. Sabrina's reading a book on ESP, and somehow Hilda thinks Sabrina can't learn how to read minds, even though she's a witch who did that in the box upper story. She tells Hilda to think of a number, and somehow she's drawing a blank. Amber says she is good to call Hilda an idiot, even though that obviously got her to use magic on him. Then Hilda gives Sabrina some food that all of the witches are talking about. It's terrible, and that's what they say about it. So she only called it a special treat and had her eat it as a prank. Archie's joke book 259. This was released on the same month as Archie's TV Laugh Out 69. Sabrina says that she doesn't know why she bothers with the outdoor scale, because it's always so inaccurate. She uses magic on it so that it flatters her a lot, praising her before telling her how much she weighs. And she's thankfully so flattered that she doesn't mind. Archie's joke book 261. This was released after Archie's TV Laugh Out 70. After Sabrina wants to play Cupid just to somehow make people fall instead, and then hiccups and somehow makes a bowling ball move in a way she doesn't want when she was using a spell to make it hit the pins, Sabrina compliments Harvey's sandcastle, and when a wave destroys it, she magically brings it back. I assume she thinks she can get away with this because they'll assume he just imagined the wave destroying it. Archie's joke book 264. Harvey says he won't have any soda or cake, and Hilda's shocked at it. Sabrina explains that he just came back from the dentist because one of his back teeth was pulled. Hilda says she doesn't believe it because she can't believe an idiot would have had wisdom teeth. This was released after Archie's TV Lap Out 72. Archie's Pals and Gals 166. This was released before Archie's TV Lap Out 92. After Sabrina and Hilda see a hockey game, which even Hilda was glad to see, they find out their brooms aren't in the parking lot anymore. Sabrina asks to borrow hockey sticks and lies that she wants them to protect herself from muggers. We see them flying home with them, and Hilda says, "Good thinking," but there's no reason a witch wouldn't warp home, as soon as nobody would be looking at her at least. Laugh Comics 393. Simple Folk. There's a half page that's easy to miss. Sabrina says people want to know what witches are like, and she says they're just like any normal teenager. Right now she's writing in her diary for the year 1991. This story was released in the middle of 1984, so she time traveled for fun to do this. It's confusing at first to anyone reading this long after 1991, where a lot of Sabrina stories had been released since. This was released after Archie's TV Lap Out 95. Archie's Pals and Gals 170. This was released before Archie's TV Lap Out 96. Somehow, Hilda thinks the gingerbread house of her cousin is pretty, and so does Sabrina. Suddenly, Sabrina goes from complimenting it to wondering what's so special about it. And Hilda says this is a low-calorie one, so she advises her to eat the wall with her, even though she could have put a spell on it to bother anyone who ate a part of the house, like a relative of hers did in the 70s comic. So I thought that was a common thing. This is surprisingly reckless of her. Archie Giant Series 542. Hilda says Sabrina should be getting up soon because she has an alarm bed. Zelda asks how it works, and it dumps her out of it floating upside down. If Zelda's been a witch for centuries, how does she not already know how an alarm bed works? Also, wouldn't there be multiple different ways that something called an alarm bed could potentially work to try to wake someone up? This was released right before Archie's TV Lap Out 97 Fear Fair. Archie's Pals and Gals 173. This was released after Archie's TV Lap Out 98. Someone tells Sabrina that scientists say trees can communicate with each other. For no reason, Sabrina tells her they can talk to people too, and is confused when she walks away thinking that she was being sarcastic. It turns out the tree was talking to Sabrina earlier, and somehow neither of them know what Sabrina said to offend her. Archie's Pals and Gals 176. This was released before Archie's TV Lap Out 102. Hilda says her relatives are flying to her house from England, and Sabrina wonders how they'll find them. Hilda told them she'd stand outside with a torch, and somehow her relatives think the Statue of Liberty's torch is Hilda's. Or she could have sent them a photo of a room in her house so that they could warp to it. I'm glad that using Control F and searching for Sabrina in every 70s comic with Sabrina wasn't a waste of time. Usually the best that comes out of this is a story where she'd say one line anyone could have said and didn't do anything. The best I've gotten out of this is seeing Sabrina summon popcorn in an imagined sequence of weather bees in the Archie Giant series. That alone doesn't make the story worth mentioning in a Sabrina retrospective, let alone reviewing. It really does suck that not every Sabrina story is on the Feature Sabrina issue list.